Okay, we stop here, last class. This one our last slide. So we were about to see some of the rules in the manual. So as to the payment methods to applicable international custom and practice are as follows. So here are these coming from the books, from those institutions, because they made a manual, right? This is the best practice. You should do like this. So in order for your payment to happen smoothly without problem, okay? These are the best practices. For example, this is from the URC 522. It needs the uniform rules for collection. So this is the ECC publication number 522, effective worldwide in January 1st, 1996. It has been revised based on previous edition. The uniform terms, definitions, procedures, principles, collection have been replenished and perfected. As a result, the status and obligation of banks in collections are clearer, and operations and collections are concretized. It means this is a dynamic thing, because there have been, for example, here, procedures and principles have been replenished, perfected. As things goes on, they have problems, so they make things better. So probably as of right now, if you see something in this book, they maybe have something different already. So we're talking about the basic ones. Don't be surprised if you start working on it. It's not like the teacher taught me a few years ago, or last semester, because it's been changing all the time. It's becoming better, hopefully, right? So this one we are already talking about this one here, UPC 600. So we're going to be seeing a lot of from this book, from this manual here in our book in this class now, because those rules coming from this place a lot. So this is the uniform custom and practice for the military credits. It's also the ICC publication number 600. This is all everything. ICC 600. It has been used since July 2007. So it's a newer one. So 96 from 2007. As a revision of the UPC 500. So they made the UPC 500. Now it's out of date. Now they have 600. Maybe in the future they're going to have 700. So the UPC is more precise. Many detailed differences will be found in UPC 600. This is another one, ESB 98. It refers to the International Standard Practice. ICC publication 590. It was passed in April 1998. It became effective worldwide in January 1999. All right. This one talks about opportunities for misunderstanding, excuse, non-payment, has been made transaction simpler, less expensive, less troublesome. URCG 325. These are less known, because the only ones that we just talked about are more known. This is the uniform rules for contract guarantee. ECC publication 325. A moral content is established to make sure that claims under guarantee must be justified while there still exist effects on the rules. This one is 758. These uniform rules for demand guarantees. ECC publication 758 consists of 35 articles. It came into force in 2010. So as you can see, most of these are relatively new, right? Because, for example, the technology has brought us to a new level. We're doing this electronically. So things are faster. And then we have many rules to make it happen smooth, right? When I say relatively new, for example, the latest one is going to be 1999, so it's mostly 20 years, around 20 years. The last one here is a URR 725, means uniform rules for bank-to-bank reimbursements, documentary credits. Consists of 4 parts, 17 articles. So as you might see, we're not going to be memorizing all those rules, right? We're going to be having, hopefully in this class, a good understanding what it is, so you can have a grasp. For example, I was doing this last semester in vacation, I was doing an online course. The guy said something like this: you should not skip parts. You should do first week 1, and then when you finish, do week 2. But some people like to see the big picture first. For example, in my case, what I did was I watched the whole course, all 7 weeks. And then now going back to the first week, to start doing it. So I watch it and then I do it. But before that, I wanted to have the whole picture. this is help a lot for you to have a bigger understanding and why you're doing this in the beginning, because there is something in the end that's going to go wrong if you don't do this in the beginning. And this is the purpose of this class. It's not for you to memorize and become experts in the international setting, but for you to have a big picture, right? So this is why I'm not making it too hard. I put those icons while you should study this part because I feel like it's more important. Maybe even this is not the most important, but I'm giving you a way of not actually, this class is not for you to memorize everything, to grasp everything, but for you to have a good notion of what you are learning. Okay? So there's a lot of rules to be learned in this setting. And I can bet even people who are working doesn't know all the rules by memory. So they have making their side, right? So they have to see it, they have to open the books and see, oh, the rule says this. But they're better because they're working on it, right? I mean, day by day, so they're learning this way. There are two other here, URCD 554. These are rules for contracts, bonds, right? Refer to design and security form practice, the operation, enforcement of bonds. BRIEF means the general rules for international factoring. Factoring is another way of doing international business, right? ESDP refers to International Standard Banking Practice for the examination of documents under documentary credits. So we start talking about documents, right? Sometimes you don't even have to deal with the merchandise. If you're, for example, if you're a bank usually deals with the document. So the document is a title for the merchandise. It represents merchandise itself. Sometimes money can be free to send it to someone just by presenting some documents. The bank does not even need to go in the court to see the merchandise. So these are the rules, and then we have many options for payments. Like for example, we talk here about factoring. We're going to be seeing this in the class maybe 11. So factoring is one way of doing international settlement. And these rules here is basically with factoring. So there are many rules for many different ways of doing it. Incoterms. We saw this when we were talking about the international forwarding 2 semesters ago, right? Incoterms is usually mostly for importing, exporting. But international settlement is more broader, right? For example, when I donate something, there's no payment, right? So no payment. So, but what is it? Is there any international settlement to be done when there's no payment? Maybe there is, because for example, if the merchandise is still blocked for the customs to get into the country, so they need to do something to let it go in, right? So Incoterms refer to international rules for the interpretation of trade terms. For example, so that I was talking about yesterday, those medical supplies, masks coming to China, it's a non-cash trade, right? But it is a trade. So interpretations of terms of trade. The publication of 715. The term Incoterms is short for international commercial terms. It gives a detailed explanation to price terms on international trade, such as FOB, SIF, here. So we saw already what is FOB. Do you remember what's the difference between FOB and SIF? Do you remember the difference between FOB and SIF? FOB is where when the shipper, the seller pays for the transportation. SIF when is the buyer pays. It's a very important distinction. Furthermore, there is also the conventions of bills of lending. We're going to be talking a lot about this, which are the Hague rules for the Hague Fish rules aiming to alleviate the increasing contradictions among parties and promoting the development of a world shipping business. So, for example, this part here is trying to avoid conflicts, because when you go and someone, for example, I go to China, how do I do to make my shipment come in and you said something? And then I go to Brazil, I want to send to China, right, talk to them. And then they say, no, you don't want to, you're doing wrong, so you need to do different. But they said that you should do this way. No, you should not do this way. So this is might happening a lot when you're doing it in different countries, right? You don't want this kind of conflict. So the last one here is about having everyone say the same thing, because if someone say one thing and the other one said a different thing, it's going to be hard which one they're going to follow, right? So we just talked about so many rules there is in the seven, right? So let's keep talking now about the banking that we were talking before, right? So the banking network in international settlement. For a smooth operation in international settlement business, a wide range of network must be established. This is why I told you, I remember giving you this example, right? In my city, they have a Bank of China there. I don't know exactly which one it is, but now that I'm here, I remember sometimes when I was walking that street, it's a downtown street, so there's a big building. In the bottom of the building, there's a branch of a Chinese bank there. So I didn't knew it at the time, but the Chinese are doing a lot of business in Brazil. So you must establish those connections. It becomes a lot easier to do business because most Brazilian people don't speak Chinese. They don't know anything about China. But if they have a Chinese branch, they go there and branch, you think that they speak where? Chinese or Portuguese? Portuguese, of course, right? It's there in Brazil. There's no use to speaking Chinese in Brazil. But even though it is a Chinese bank, have a direct connection to China. So it happens to help a lot. So you must establish those connections, network connections. The fulfillment of international settlement is based on the transfer of funds among countries, which is completed by account transfer among banks. Thus, this is vital to establish unrestricted banking network across the world. The institutions of banking network include correspondent bank, branch, representative of agency, subsidiary bank, affiliated bank, consortium, etc. Among the correspondent bank is the most important and widely employed. We're going to see a lot of different terms when considering bank. A bank could be, for example, here, a branch, a representative, or it could be a subsidiary, it could be a consortium. Sometimes those two terms are referred to the same bank. So we're going to be seeing when we're talking about the different ways of doing international settlement. Are you going to use a letter of credit? Are you going to use factoring? So in each setting it would be a little bit different. But there's a lot of similarities as well. When a local bank and a foreign bank provides agency services for each other under an agreement, the two banks become correspondent. So for example, if you're getting involved, I'm a Brazilian guy doing business in China, and I use Bank of Brazil, and they hear from China, the company is using Bank of China. So if those two banks start talking to each other and doing the service, right, for this transaction happening between me and China, so those two banks become correspondent banks in international settlement, mutually. The correspondent bank, I told you, right, there's a lot of types, right? So this is the bank, not him, okay? The correspondent bank, which is an independent foreign bank, has no relationship of subordination both in funds and administration with the local bank. So even though you can consider Bank of Brazil and Bank of China correspondent, so Bank of Brazil are not under Bank of China and not vice versa. Bank of China is not under Bank of Brazil. They have no obligations to each other. They're doing this in a way to foster, to promote the business, to have it. It's like a cooperation. No one is giving orders to the other. So no relationship of subordination in both funds and administration with the local bank, but provides a specific service like settlement, financing, consulting, training for each other by agreement. It has to be noted that only the head office can establish the correspondent relationship with the foreign banks. Alright, so you have to understand this. This is done by agreement, right? It's not like, for example, Bank of Brazil. I know they have small branches in the biggest cities in China, maybe Beijing, right? But if you have a correspondent bank that is another institution, this is only an agreement of cooperation. It's not like I have the boss here telling the branch, small branch outside the country to do something. Traditionally, correspondent bank can be divided in two types: depository bank and non-depository. What are the meaning of those words? When a bank account are opened in the correspondent banks, right? The ones that are agreeing and helping you out. This kind of a correspondent bank is called a depository bank, which funds are transferred directly between accounts of the two banks. So the transfer happens more fast, smoothly, without control, because they're correspondent banks. They're supposed to be working together all the time. Generally, a depository bank must be correspondent bank, but not the other way around. So the bank account can be split into a postal account, which is an account of the local bank opened in a foreign bank, and postal account is an account of a foreign bank opened in a local bank, which differs with each other in the reimbursement and remittance column. All right. Any questions? All right. When it comes to setting up a depository bank, large banks with strong finance, outstanding reputation, and advantage locations are the best choice. So if you're dealing in another country, you always want to work with a bank that has a good reputation, has an abundant source of money to finance things. You don't want to work with small institutions. And the depository bank has better advantage of large amount of business contact and close relationships with the domestic bank. Non-depository bank, so there's a lot of this wrong typo here, right? Not bank, okay? Non-depository bank means that the correspondent parties set up no account in each other, but settle debts and claim though a third bank. In practice, the correspondent parties will open one joint account in third banks to transfer funds and sell debts. So how do we do the establishment of the correspondent relationship? How do you go about when you want to do this? The step one is the credit investigation. This is supposed to be very abundantly in the internet. I don't know how it does work here in China, but for example, in my country, the United States, these are big institutions. Sometimes they are public institutions. So it means that the records supposed to be public. So you can go to the internet and find the annual report. The annual report tells a lot about the company, about the bank. It tells you the revenue, amount of clients, amount of business dealings. So it tells how much this is financially stable. So you're doing your investigation because you don't want it to be seen doing business with a bank that has not a good reputation, right? So the first one is the credit investigation. To pick up a correspondent bank in numerous banks, credit investigation is indispensable. It is essential because the least problem that you want to have when you're doing business is credit. It's finance, is money, right? Traditionally, there will not be a correspondent relationship established between countries without an official diplomatic relationship. The content of the investigation may involve credit worthiness, related financial status, and operation style. In addition, the political status, laws and regulations of the country where correspondent banks locate are also important in the investigation. I just told you the most important one, it's credit worthiness, but also has to do a lot of other things. Political status of the country, cooperation, and so forth and so on. Step number 2, negotiating and signing the agreement. So remember, even though you know all these rules here, everything in the manual, what makes the difference to is what? Is your skill as a negotiator. Are you a nice person? Can you talk to someone without being feel like nervous? Can you talk with someone without your hands in the pocket, without reading the agreement to them? Because this is what I'm telling you. So when I give you the opportunity to come here next week and share your answer with the class, your answer is just 1 page, right? 1 A4 page, not too long, right? So maybe I will feel more happier, glad if you come here and instead of reading your answer, you tell your answer. It doesn't matter if it looks different than what you have written for. Just tell by your words, your own words. Tell the meaning of the answer, not word by word, comma by comma. has to do with your negotiation skills. This is very important. Right? It's not what you're saying, but how you are saying. Can you see how much this is important? This is why, for example, I'm trying to give you the opportunity, I'm trying to make you see how important it is for you to become better as a person, because it goes on all the rest of your life. So the next step here is the negotiation agreement, right? They're not going to sign any agreement without the negotiation is done, right? So there's a lot of techniques, a lot of things, but also you have to have practice. You need to be relaxed, not nervous. You need to do things by your own, not reading, not like a robot. So on the basis of the investigation, the parties began to negotiate eventually and sign the agreement, which usually contains the name and address, both banks, business programs, currency of the correspondence, accounts, signing date, maturity date, applied branches, and the composition of control documents. You might also think that this is a meeting, not flexible, right? This is why I told you the story at the beginning of the other day, the class. Remember the story about the chairs? So the guy went to buy chairs in China, right? And they said, well, I cannot do it for you until next year. I have so many clients. But even though he invited him to have dinner, right? You remember? So when he's having dinner with this guy, they have a fish, right? They eat all the meat on top of the fish. But the guys kind of remember why I cannot turn the fish, right? Because I'm not the host. So he asked the Chinese host, the Chinese person who invites him, can you turn on the fish? And the guy was so touched, because a foreign person knows the culture of the local. And he turns the fish, and he kind of likes this guy, and put him in front of the other clients. This has nothing to do with the program, the currency for correspondent. Nothing to do with the account, signing date, maturity date, applied branch, composition, control document, nothing to do with it. It has to do with the negotiation. It has to do with your people skills. You can make a lot of things happen because you are a good person, you have good people skills. You look at them when you're talking to them. You pay attention. Right? Can you see the importance? So last Wednesday, we have an English corner, and it was fun one, because I thought we have maybe 15 students, and they're not only talking to me, they kind of get the message. I talk to them, well, you should be talking to each other, making friends. And they kind of make small group there, make small group there, some group with me, and then I change people, rotated. So not only me talking, people listen to me. Because sometimes when I go to the English corner, it's like that. They're not making friends at all, they're not speaking, they're not practicing the English. Even though they go there, it's a good step, right? Better than not going. But you should also do the work correctly. So they start making friends with other Chinese students like you. Because I tell them. So practice does not have to be with only foreign person. So there's much to be learned in this class, right? So this is very important. So let's finish here the phrase by which checking may provide authenticity of the certificates, letters sent from other party, and then other copies of the agreement are delivered, or relevant branches and control documents are exchanged. And this is the part that they're signing up and make it happen. But also, it is also after the negotiation. This is an example, right? You can find in your book, just for you to have understanding. So this is the 18th year entry. Bank, they have to state both banks, right? Friendly negotiation on basis, equally mutual benefits, agreed establish a correspondent relationship between those two banks. They put those two banks here. So there are parts here. Each part will send a booklet, authorized signatures, telegraphic test, remittance, federal credit, collection. We're going to be talking about those things, right? On later classes. But the agreement has to state everything, right? Remittance, federal credit, collection, the names of the banks, who are going to do what, in which place. Step number 3, confirming control documents. The control documents exchanged by each other contain authorized signatures, telegraph, test keys, and several of terms and conditions. I can bet they're not using telegraph anymore. Right? This book may not even be too old, but the technology is evolving so fast. I don't ever seen this machine for a long time. I remember when I was a kid, I used to go to my dad's firm, and I used to play with this, right? I was to play. Well, think about it. If they let me play with this, because they're not using that anymore, right? They have a new model. What I'm saying is, they would not let a kid like me play with important tool dealing with international business, right? What I'm saying is, this is a piece of museum, right? No one was using telex anymore. So authorized signatures are the signature symbols of the authorized officers of correspondent bank. Only markers with authorized identical with the authorized signatures do the documents transmitted within correspondent banks come into force. I bet there is going to be a lot of change in this field. For example, China maybe is in the top of this technology. You guys are working on the facial recognition, right? So when you went to a shopping mall or store, you don't need to put your fingerprint, you don't need to do nothing like this. The camera recognizes it right away. I have read about some stores, maybe in Shanghai, those big cities. You should just go in there, pick up something, go out. It's charged automatically to you because they recognize your face. I never seen this anywhere else in the world. So this is a high technology. So there's a lot of changing about the recognition of authentication, right? Those things are important because when you're doing business, you want to make sure they're sending money to the right person, to the right bank account, the authorization comes from the right person, and everything. So I wrote here, this part might be updated. For sure that is, right? It is updated. The telegraph test is the confidential code of the beginning of the telex to verify that the telex or cable is authentic. So they're not using this anymore. So telex and then fax, and then now we have internet, and now all of our apps are in our palm of our hands, like the cell phone. So this is these two parts that comes from the book, right? So remember when we talk about the SWIFT number, this is a code from the bank. So the SWIFT number is still being used because every branch of the bank has a SWIFT code. So when you give this number, it tells them the country, it tells them the geographic location, the city, the location of the bank, right? So these are still in use. Schedule of terms and conditions is a list of service fees that a bank charges its overseas correspondent for providing corresponding services such as commission, for confirming letter of credit, negotiation, a remittance, and etc. I just put this picture here, so as you can see from the old time machine to the notebook here, right? Things are changing fast. All right, the selection of the correspondent bank. In terms of choosing correspondent bank, the sister banks are in the top of the list. Sister banks are the branch institutions set up at home or abroad, including branch bank, representative office, agent's office, subsidiary bank, affiliated bank, and consortium bank. With a full understanding of sister banks, they can share risk and enjoy the profit collectively. As an entire with the sister bank, there exists a great advantage in operational security and the speed of capital collection. I don't know if you have this experience before, but when you're going to do someone that doesn't know you, do you have this experience? For example, you're going to buy something. They don't know you. They don't recognize you. You don't know how they work. This is the concept of the sister banks. This is why you wanted to establish a correspondent bank in the other country. Because they might do little things different than you do in your own country. So, for example, when you go to a sister bank, it means what? You have talked a lot. They know how you work. They already send you their booklet of instructions. They send you the forms. They send you how to do it. And they probably have someone already being trained in how to do it, make it happen. Because when you go and try to do things, no, you fill out this form wrong. You need this form. Where do I get this form? Oh, this form you don't have it. You have to go to ask in China. You see how difficult it is to do business when you don't know how the system works. So sister banks does not mean that they are part of each other, but they're cooperating. So, for example, if I have a requirement in Bank of Brazil to do this, instead of keeping it here with me, I send to my sister bank in China. So when you guys are going to instruct a Chinese person to send money here, you use this form, you kind of connect with me using this line, you're going to do this, these are the instructions. So it's going to be very much easier if you have a connected bank like a sister bank before. Alright? So the second choice for the correspondent bank is the depository bank. On the basis of setting up accounts with each other, it will be convenient for transferring funds and controlling risk. The third one is a non-depository bank. There's a kind of correspondent bank, non-depository bank is kind of familiar with the bank, but the operation process is more complicated and more time-consuming. For the funds transfer, it has to be finished through a third bank. So banks can fill up different functions, right? Non-depository, depository, remittance, right? So there's a lot of things here. But even though when you get the letter, work with them, things get better and easier. Let's see this topic now. Other banks institutions in international settlement business. So maybe it doesn't have to be a bank, not a financial institution. So sometimes it gets blurred, the definition. What is a bank? What is a financial institution? For example, right now in Brazil, I have almost nothing in Brazil, okay? So I don't have a home, I don't have a car, I just have my bank account in Bank of Brazil, and also I have a brokerage account. The brokerage is not a bank, but it deals with investment. So I have a connection between my bank account and my brokerage account. So what it is then, other financial institutions that can help you with. For example, there is a rule in my case for my brokerage account. I cannot transfer any money from the brokerage account directly from China. It needs to come from my bank. So this is one of their restrictions. So, but this is not to make my life difficult, because if I could, I could transfer money directly from here to China to them, but now I need to transfer to Bank of Brazil needs to transfer to them. This might be a way of protection, right? So no one can take money out of my brokerage account except by the bank. So this is kind of increase the protection for the money. And you have to remember this before you start to criticizing the other country. Oh, why do they have to have all this ruling? Maybe they have a problem before. This is why they put this ruling in place. So the way of doing business is to understanding why, make friends with them, connection, cooperate, and things go easier. So branch bank abroad is an operational institution established by the head office of a commercial bank in a foreign country, which is subject to the head office in the finance and administration. The advantage of branch bank abroad is that it can offer services for both the domestic and abroad business for domestic transnational enterprise. Meanwhile, increasing profitability by providing services for local enterprises. This is important. What are the advantages of you taking the investment to open up something in another country, like a bank, for example, like a financial institution? It fosters more business. Sometimes it is just because I'm starting to see, well, for me to become an exporter, I need to do this, I need to do that. So many things, so difficult. Sometimes I'm going to give up because I don't have the knowledge. Too much things to go over with. But when things become easier, you get more business. This is why. Right? So in addition, branch bank abroad has an access to capital markets abroad, where there are more opportunities for offering investment or utilizing foreign investment with a lower interest rate. Maybe just because you have business in that country, you have access to their market, to their capital markets. Otherwise, you may not have it. So these are important points to consider. Representative office is a non-operational office established by the commercial bank in a foreign country, which cannot conduct normal banking activities like taking deposits and making loans. It is responsible for collecting and providing information and keeping in touch with the local clients for its head office. The SEC of the representative office usually is making preparations for the establishment of a foreign branch. Agency office is a financial institution established by a commercial bank in a foreign country, which can only make a loan and transfer funds but cannot take deposits from the host country. This is funds mainly come from its parent banks and other relevant institutions in the interbank market of the host country. As a component part of the parent fund, it has no legal personality and it stays between the representative office and the branch bank. The business conducted by an agency office is a series of non-depository banking services, such as making business loans, trade finance operations related to letter of credit, supplementary trade. So as we can see here, there's a lot of leniency, flexibility. Maybe you open up a full branch, full services. Maybe it's not a full service. Maybe it's an agent office, or maybe it is a representative office. They all have limitations. Right? Because sometimes, for example, for you to get a full bank there, maybe you need to go to the country and get some license to do that. But your business is not providing such a service. Maybe only representative office will do. This is why there's some different levels of the service or the opening branch that you can do in other countries. For example, this is another one, subsidiary bank. It's legally independent bank, registered in the host country by a domestic commercial bank, holding a whole or majority of shares. The domestic bank has control over the subsidiary bank. However, all operations of subsidiary bank have to be complied with local laws and regulations and supervised by financial supervisory authority of the host country. This is also important to notice. For example, when a bank in China opens a subsidiary in Brazil, they have to follow Brazilian law when they are over there. It's not because they're Chinese that they can, for example, not follow the law in the host country. The same thing has happened when the Brazilian bank opens a subsidiary here. They have to follow the Chinese law, right? You have to understand this. The business scope of the subsidiary bank is quite broad. Besides all activities permitted for commercial domestic bank, it may conduct certain activities that the local commercial banks may not do in some circumstances. Another one, affiliated bank, is much similar to subsidiary, but it is also for a legally independent bank registered in the host country by a domestic commercial bank. The difference is that the share that the domestic bank holds is less than 50%, and the rest must be owned by a host country or several foreign banks jointly. For example, you can open a branch account like this one affiliated. It means the owner country is also is also owner of this bank, right? It can have a joint bank. This one was new for me when I got to know, right? I thought, well, how can a Chinese open a branch in Brazil and they let the government become part of it, right? So there's some countries who are allowing this to happen, and this is the affiliate bank. Consortium bank. We talked about this in the first definition, right? Now we're seeing the specifics. Consortium bank is usually a bank invested and registered by a group of multinational banks from 2 or more countries. All right. This is the break, right? Break time? Okay, let's have a break. They know you? Oh, okay. Alright. If you don't like me or I do something wrong, you complain to her. Okay? Alright, this is the bell, right? Okay, we're almost finished this class, so we're gonna have some work today. Alright, that over here, let's consortium bank. So consortium bank is the usual bank invested registered group by a multinational organization. This is a legal entity with its own name and function. Besides undertaking the business of parent bank, it also conducts its own activities. Its business scope ranges from large sums to long-term syndicated loan, which its parent bank is unwilling or has no capability to provide the underwriting of corporate securities. Euro currency market business, the arrangement of international positions and merging of corporations, and consulting for projects of corporate finance. So this is when one bank is a small institution, they need to go together with someone who has a, and for example, what is the purpose of those countries to make a European Union, right? Because alone they are small. When they're together, they're stronger. This is the same purpose here. When a lot of banks get together, they have more finance power, they have more knowledge about different areas when they are. So they get to do bigger business, right? Because they have more power. Which is on characteristics. So when they get together, they have their characteristics of the consortium. So the consortium bank stays outstanding in a banking network. The members are mostly multinational banks with worldwide reputations. The registration place of the consortium banks is often an international financial center or offshore financial center. In addition, its activities are usually involving a business that is high cost and deep risk and large size. That are more professional and more difficult than a single bank cannot or is unwilling to do. So there are two reasons, right, for the one single bank. They maybe not even have enough capacity to do, or they are not willing to do because there's too bigger tax for them. This is why they get together. They made a consortium. So consortiums, many banks get together. At last, the clients of the consortium banks are always the government of different countries and multinationals. It is rare for the consortium bank to offer retail business with a small sum of customers. So why do they want to get bigger, right? Because they have bigger clients, right? So they're not going to be offering you a bank account. You cannot have a bank account with a consortium of banks. It's usually governments who are dealing with those big institutions, those consortiums. Okay, this is the end of the class. We talk a lot about things here. I already sent you the 50, right? You got the 50? Right? Well, last class I sent you the 50, right? You got it? Yeah, I sent you the 50, right? So these are the questions. Let's more, right? Just 5 questions. You have to choose 2 of them and write your answers in a piece of paper. And this is your homework for the next class. So I'll be choosing some of you to share your answers in the beginning of the class. I kind of ask you not to, for example, you have a roommate, right? Try to do a different question. Try to not to do the same question. I don't want to come here next class. Everyone do the number 1 and 2. Everyone, no one does the number 3, 4, or 5. Let's try to make a little, right? Is that okay? Don't be too nervous about it. You can write in your own words. Oh, I mean this. When you come here to share your answer, try to do what I tell you, right? I'm not going to take a point out of it because you don't remember exactly your answer. Try to tell your answer, not read your answer. Is that okay? You can hold your answer. If you forgot something, you can forget this topic. But try not to read it. Right? Okay? So I have 2 things that I'm going to ask you now. Do you want to maybe start working on this, or should I start the next topic? What do you want to do? How much time do you have? Next class, and everyone choose 1 and 2. No one choose number 3, 4, or 5. Now you need to choose only 2 questions. Okay. You can be anyone. You you have to choose, remember, this is what I told you the first day of class. This is the rule, right? So we're always going to have some questions by the end of the class. In this case here we have 5 questions. Sometimes we have more questions. You only have to choose 2 questions. They could be anyone. It could be 1 and 5, 2 and 3, 4 and 1, whatever. Choose 2 questions and answer them. Okay? I'm just trying to say that try not to do all of you the same question. You don't know, for example, you don't know which one she's going to choose, right? But maybe you have your roommate, right? Who is your roommate? You have any roommates? Who is the roommate of this guy here? Wait. Who else? Who? Raise your hand. Who's your roommate here? Who is the roommate of this guy? Wait, then who? You? Okay, for example, you guys are in the same room, right? Try not to answer the same questions between yourselves, okay? Because you don't know the other students, but you live together, right? So say, well, let's try to answer different questions. I'm not going to be too harsh on you on this. I just don't want you to, all of you answer the same question. That's all. All right. So do you want to start working on this, or do you want me to start with the topic? Maybe you can start a new topic and go slow, right? Maybe. Is that okay? So let me ask you this. Are you those guys here who did not do LinkedIn homework yet? Are you having trouble downloading the LinkedIn? For example, here's the LinkedIn. Sue, Cindy and Wade and Danny. Are you having trouble downloading the LinkedIn? I have sent you. You have sent it already? Yeah. Did you receive an answer from me? My LinkedIn is in the other form, not this one. Because, for example, when you send me a request, right, I send you an answer, right? Like, okay, thank you. If I receive my answer, is it okay? I put your point, right? But if I did not receive an answer, if you did not receive an answer from me, it means that I did not see your message. So you should do it again. Did I answer you? Did I answer you? So this is, maybe I didn't see your message. So send me again, okay? Alright. I did not update this one. This is the same from the last class. That's just some of you taking pictures, but I did not update this one, okay? Alright. So before I get into the next topic, so what do you know about negotiable instruments? When I say negotiable instruments, what is the first thing that comes in your mind? Or maybe, what's the definition of a negotiable instrument? What does it mean, negotiable instrument? Okay. You need to understand, for example, one thing. What it is the word title means. Title. what the word title means. For example, when you buy a car, a car has a title, and the title needs to be the name of someone, right? So, for example, if you're going to sell a car, it's not just like receiving money and giving the car to someone. The transaction has to be more than that. The guy needs to pick up a title and sign the title and transfer the title to you. Otherwise, you don't own the car. It's not a...
Oh, the teacher. So, your title is a teacher.
Yeah, this is another way, this is another setting, another input. This is a title has many different meanings. I'm talking about title of something. Okay? My title is a teacher, but in this case we're talking about different things. For example, it's not only about receiving the money and giving the car to this person. You need to do something else. Otherwise, he still does not have the ownership of the car. So there's a title, maybe in some institution, who holds the title of all the cars, all the transportations, right? So they have to go and sign up the title to this person, and they go and transfer the title. Now it's changing ownership. It doesn't matter if you're using the car that's not in your name, right? As long as the person who owns the car knows that you're not doing something illegal. For example, there's some business who owns the car. Maybe a taxi business. You go there and become a part of taxi community. The company owns 100 cars and they employ those drivers. So the driver is driving a taxi cab that is not his own car. It belongs to the company. So the ownership, the title is in the name of the company. So why am I talking about title when I wanted to say, to explain to you negotiable instruments? Because when you do international business, all the merchandising that you're sending or receiving has a title, right? So the exporter is sending a merchandise, it has to have a title. A title from someone in China sending to someone in Brazil, right? For example, this is a product, right? Whatever, water, you can buy it, right? It has no title, right? It doesn't say the name, it doesn't. But instruments are things that are negotiable. For example, there are some physical things that are negotiable, like merchandise. You can send, for example, merchandise to another country. You put it inside of the container, and you ship to another country. It has a title, and you can negotiate the title. But for example, there are titles that have no physical merchandise, for example, bonds. When a government sells bonds, what is bonds? For example, when you have a title to a bond, what does it mean? Bond, it is when you borrow money to the government. So you buy, for example, 100 bonds from the Chinese government. It means that you buy it because you're paying for the bond. You're sending money to the government because you're buying from the government. What it means is the government now has your money and he's going to return to you, maybe whatever, the maturity of the bond. It's going to be 1 year. So it's going to give you the money back plus interest, right? So when you hold the title of the bond, it means that it belongs to you. But it's not a physical thing. You don't own any merchandise. You cannot pick up things, right? It is something that is not physical. So negotiable instruments are those papers that give you entitlement to something, give you ownership to something, and then it can be used to negotiate. For example, when I was coming here to China, I wanted to sell my old car, right? No one wants to buy it, right? So I lowered the price. Well, instead of asking 1,500, that's now 1,300. No one wants to buy it. Let's put 1,000. No one still wanted to buy it. So then I came to the day that I need to travel. So I need to go to my brother and set a paper, like giving him the authority to negotiate my car instead of me. The title of the car is to me. But what I'm doing is transferring the right of me negotiating the car because I am the owner. I transfer to my brother. So I go to the registry and make a document, right? So we use a lot of documents when negotiating here in this international settlement. So I make a document saying, well, my brother has the right to negotiate this car that belongs to me, reference to this title, and he can negotiate and receive the money and everything else, and then we stamp the document, and now he has a document saying that he can negotiate. So we have a title with some paper, and now we have another paper attached to the title. If my brother now has another paper, it gives him the right to negotiate the title of my car. So as you can see, documentation is very important when you're negotiating between countries, because everything needs to be documented. Remember last class I told you, if you're going to ship something, you get a receipt. What is on the receipt? Information, right? You have the address, how much this product weighs, when it's shipped, what's the description. So what is this one here? What is this? It's a picture of what? Can you guess? Picture of what? Yes, but what it is, this is specific one here. It's a negotiable instrument. What it is? You guys use checks? Checks? Do you know what is a check? So when you open a bank account, they give you a checkbook. You can write, for example, I know you're using a check here, but did you ever use a check before? No? Never had it before? I know right now it's not convenient anymore because they use with check electronic payment a lot. So everyone is using electronic payment, even me, right? I'm not using Chinese, I'm using it a lot. But the thing is, in Brazil, this is a still thing that they still use a lot. So we have a checkbook, we go to a maybe grocery store, and there is let's say 125. You can write here 125, and then in numbers, and then you can write here 125 Brazilian reais, and then you give the check to the person. You pay for your groceries, you write a check. So a check is a negotiable instrument. For example, what the bank, for example, I give the check to the grocery, right? Cash, I pay my grocery, I give it to her. And then she can have two options. She can go to the bank and deposit. And they take the money from my bank account and deposit to the company's bank account, right? So it represents money. But also, instead of actually going to the bank and cashing the money, you can actually pay your own bills by sending the money to someone else, even so you're not cashing the money, right? You're using to negotiate something else for you. So you don't have actually to go. But for example, there are some things here. You can, for example, right here, pay to the grocery store. If I put a name here, for example, put a name of the store, like Walmart. Now Walmart cannot use to negotiate anymore. It needs to go and cash it in the bank. So every negotiable instrument has its own set of rules. For example, if I cross the check here, it means that I cannot use for negotiating, or I can only use for depositing. I cannot even go and ask them to give me cash. I need to deposit as if I cross the check. So there are negotiable instruments that they have their own rules. And this is why you need to understand how many or how are the negotiable instruments and what's the best use you can do for them. For example, your situation, does this instrument will serve you well or not? This is why you need to understand all the options. So too much talking for just one slide, right? There's nothing else than just negotiable instruments. Do you have any questions about negotiable instruments based on what I just talked?
You live in China.
So you, what, so?
And you use this one time.
Checks?
Yeah.
I don't have a check. I only use WeChat. I have a bank account and WeChat. But for example, if you open a check account, they do give you a checkbook. Can you have a checkbook? Or not?
Yeah.
You can have a checkbook. Your guy's not using, just not using, right? Because it's not convenient anymore. For example, another rule that I can think of. For example, is there any limit for the check payment? Can you pay any amount? For example, I'm going to pay 50,000. They allow me to do this? 50, 100,000. Is there a limit? Yeah, there's a limit, right? So maybe, for example, for above certain amount, and maybe you need to use another negotiable instrument that allows you to pay more money, right? So this is all for you to understand what are the limitations of the negotiable instruments. In order, for example, if you're dealing with more money than the instrument allows you to, you need to find another one who allows you to pay large sums of money. All right. So negotiable instruments is the instruments the rights on which can be transferred from one party to another. According to the U.S. Uniform Commercial Code in 1952, negotiable instruments is an unconditional writing that promises or orders the payment of a fixed amount of money. So it is everything that you can do to transfer money to one person to another. It's a promise. For example, when I'm writing you a check, I'm not giving you money. I'm writing you and giving you a promise that if you can use the check, you can go and pick up your money. So it's not a money itself. Right? So it is a right to transfer money. It's not the money itself. You want to say something? Huh? It's a credit, right? No, it's not. No, it's not a credit. Sorry. For credit is when, for example, if you don't have credit, it means that people don't have to lend money to you. This is a good question. Why someone can have credit and other can't? Someone can have, and some other people cannot have credit. That's a good question. Why someone can have credit and someone else cannot have credit? For example, maybe you go to the bank and ask, well, I want to borrow one. They say yes for you and no for him. Why is that? Huh? For example, what is credit worthiness? When you're doing the investigation, right? So you're going to see, well, this institution has a lot of reputation and credit, and the other doesn't. Why is that?
Because someone
It has to do with this, but it's not.
they
It
don't
has
have
more.
money. They don't have money.
No, it has to do with honesty, but also is much more than that. Okay? For example, let's say you are a small guy. You earn, let's say, 1,000 UN for a month, and he earns 100 UN for a month. So his capacity to pay back is much better. So maybe it is not about honesty. Maybe both of you are honest, right? But your capacity to pay back is higher because your salary is higher. So for example, if you're asking much more money, they say, well, you cannot afford to pay me back with your salary. So this is why they're not lending you money. It's not about honesty in this case, okay? But also it has to be honesty, right? So reputation for an institution means what? They're always honoring their dealings. So if I say I'll send you money, if I borrow, I'm always going to pay you back, this comes to be honest. But also it has to do with a lot of things, like your capacity to pay them back. For example, when you go and negotiate for a loan to buy a home, I remember when I did this in Brazil, they wanted to see my salary. They wanted to see my wife's salary. They wanted to see if I have kids. Why is that? Why does having kids have to do with the loan bank? Because kids mean expensive, right? If I have kids, they have to be paying their school, I have to be buying more food, right? So my salary will be consumed by the kids, so I have less money to pay the bank back. So they're kind of seeing my situation. If I can't afford to borrow this amount of money, because if I don't have capacity to pay them back, they will not lend me the money, right? So it's not always about honesty, okay? So negotiable instruments could be like this. I put some here, right? Check is one of them. Promissory note is another one. Bill of exchange. We're going to be seeing a lot of bill exchange in this class. We're going to be talking a lot of this. And you're going to see, I'm not going to be writing, I'm going to be writing B dash E. There's a lot of acronyms, right? So we're going to start learning. So, for example, money is also a negotiable instrument. It means value, right? When I give you money, I'm giving you value, right? So these are examples of a negotiable instrument. Money, promissory notes, checks, bill of exchange. In a broad sense, negotiable instruments refer to any commercial document or title. It is an evidence of someone's ownership of money or goods or that is actually under his control, such as an invoice, bill of lading, insurance certificate, warranty, certificate of deposit, bill of exchange, promissory notes, check, and etc. So as you can see, there's a lot of negotiable instruments. Maybe you are familiar with some of them, maybe not familiar with some other of them. Right? So negotiable instrument must specify the name of the person who is responsible for delivering the money or goods, as well as the name of the person who is entitled to claim money or goods. The former person is a debtor, and the latter is a creditor. Right? So when you, for example, negotiable instruments, they have to be the basic information. But for example, they're not made equal, right? Or they're not the same. So, for example, in the check, right, you can write a name. So I was talking to you about some rules, right? If I write a name, the guy cannot go and cash the money. He needs to deposit it if I cross the check, right? Like this, cross. Can you see it? So if I cross the check, this check is only good for deposit. This is the rule about this negotiable instrument called check. But for example, I can put a name here, right? So this slide is talking about he needs to have a debtor, creditor name on it. So there is a place here that I can put a name, right? Is there a place here that I can put a name on the money? Is there a place here that I can write a name? No, right? So not all negotiable instruments are the same. So they are different. So in the case of the money, we don't have a place, I don't put names. So the money is owned to the person who has the money, right? So for example, if you steal a car, it's not like that. You steal a car, but you still don't have the title of the car. So if I find the car, I can go pick it up. Sorry, I'm not stealing it back. But the car is still not yours because the title is in my name. But the money is different, right? If I steal some money from your pocket, money does not have a title, right? How can you say this money is yours and not mine? It's very hard to prove. You cannot prove, exactly. But in the car, it's different because if you steal my car, you still don't have the title. I can go off. The car is still in my name. It's not yours. You stole it from me. So as you can see, negotiable instruments are made different. They have different rules. Some of them are applied this way, some of them are applied another way. Alright. These two parties sign in a single contract, which is a written voucher of ownership of the money or goods. This voucher forms the broad sense of a negotiable instrument. So this is the main picture, the big picture, right? Not all of them are the same, but this is the main idea. The right of the voucher can be transferred, so instrument has the characteristics of negotiation, and it's called negotiable instrument. Let me tell you about another one, another negotiable instrument. Did you guys ever travel abroad before? Did you guys ever travel to another country? Does anyone here travel to another country before? So one of the main concerns when someone is traveling to another country is to take money with you, right? So let's say, for example, I can take $1,000 with me, all in cash, and put it in my pocket, right? Now I'm sleeping in my chair in an airplane, right? So someone is sneaking in my pocket, pick up the money, right? I didn't know this. So when I wake up, I go to the airport, I need to pay something. Where's my money? Where's my money? So this is a legitimate concern for many people who travel. They don't want to lose their money. Now, for example, maybe when I was sleeping, this guy was getting too close to me, right? Maybe he's the one who stole it. But how can I prove it, right? I didn't take a picture, you're stealing from me. So the money does not have the title, has no my name on it, so I cannot prove it. So one way people can do is they go to a bank and they ask for a traveler's check. Did you ever heard about a travel check? For example, I can go to Bank of Brazil and give them $1,000, and they give me one note, like one piece of paper, like this, right? Like something like this. They give me one piece of paper like this. They write here, worth $1,000, and also they put my name on it. Now, I'm traveling with a travel check. I put the travel check in my pocket. If by any chance someone pick my travel check, they cannot cash it. Because the rule of this negotiable instrument is when you go, for example, to a bank, the guy stole my travel check. You go to a bank, well, I want to cash. They're going to ask your documents. They're going to ask some identification. They're going to ask your passport. They're going to ask your Chinese ID. If your name does not match with the travel check, they will not give you the money. So it becomes more secure for me to travel with a travel check instead of money. Right? Of course, there are people, for example, maybe you cannot go to the bank and cash the money because it's not in your name, right? So maybe instead of going to the bank, you try to offer to her, right? So the travel check is $1,000. Maybe you're going to offer for $900, but what is the motive? She will not accept it because she still cannot cash the check. Because when she goes to the bank, they're going to see some ID, and it's in my name. No one can cash but me. So this is the rule of this kind of negotiable instrument. So this is why we use negotiable instrument, because they have rules, and the rules is for what? Why do you think there are some rules on the negotiable instruments? Yes, I'm asking you, why do you think there are some rules when dealing with negotiable instruments? For example, I talked about the travel check. Travel checks is a negotiable instrument. And this has this rule, right? You cannot cash it unless you show up some documents proving that you were cashing it. Because the travel check was in my name. So why do you think all the negotiable instruments have rules? Come on. Why do they have rules? To protect someone, right? So who is this someone? For example, in the case of the travel check, is to protect whom? To protect the traveler, right? He doesn't want to lose money. This is why he's using travel check, right? So it's to protect the traveler. So, for example, the rule for the title of the car is for what? For example, the rule, the car cannot be sold without the title, right? So they have this rule? It protects whom? The owner of the car. Because if the car gets stolen, he still has the title. For example, if they're going to a street and the police stop, can I see your documents? Well, and they say, well, this car is not in your name, so you have whatever. So, for example, when that gets stolen, you can go and report, right, that my car is being stolen. So they put it on a national list. So the police guy stopped that person. Well, this car is being reported stolen. Now you have to go to the police station and you have to present the title of the car. Otherwise, you are in trouble. So the rules protecting the ownership of the owner of the car, right? So this is why we have those rules. When you are dealing with a negotiable transaction, commercial transaction to another country, you don't want it to make it too easy for you to lose money in the transaction just because someone is stealing your merchandise or stealing your money. This is why they are using negotiable instruments. They are made based on some rules to protect you as an exporter and to protect the other guy, if you understand, as an importer. So both of you feel secure. You're not going to lose the money in this transaction because it is protected by the rules of the negotiable instrument. For example, for me to travel, the best negotiable instrument is to use a travel check. Right? Sometimes you don't have an option. For example, travel check is an option. I can carry money, right? Easy. But also I can go and buy a travel check. For example, in the situation of a car in Brazil, you cannot buy a car without having a title. It's not negotiable. You need to have a title. It's not an option. I didn't say it's not negotiable. It's not an option. So you need to have a title. So there are some situations that you can opt for one option. There are some situations that you have to do this because it is the rule. All right. So let's go another slide here. I read this one already, right? These two parties in a single contract, which is a written voucher of ownership. I read this one. In the narrow sense, negotiable instruments refer to the securities with the purpose of payment. The drawer signs on the negotiable instrument and conditionally orders another party or himself to pay a certain amount of money at a determinable future date. Under the order, if the drawer himself pays, it is a promissory note. If another party pays, it is a bill of exchange or a check. Now, for example, we are understanding this. Let's get into the rules, right? So the different instruments for different situations, right? For example, we here see some difference, right? So let's go over here. To pay a certain amount of money at a determined future date. So if under the order, if it's a drawer, himself pays. We're going to see what I explain better what's a drawer, okay? If it is a promissory note, it is another party who pays. If it is a bill of exchange or a check. So this one is a bill of exchange, this one is a check. Let's make it clear. So today's class deals with the narrow sense of negotiable instrument, which includes the bill of exchange, promissory notes, and a check. We're going to explain a lot in the better, in the different. What is the difference between those three, okay? Okay, let's see an example so you might understand it better. Well, here's in New York, this is the person A. Here's in Paris, person B. Here's the person C, also in Paris, and person D, also in New York. And this is the direction of the move, okay? So the following is a brief case of three negotiable instruments. A is in New York with a batch of chairs from D in Paris with a total value of $10,000. And the order number is this one, ISEOPLC001. The shipment date is on July 10, 2013, and it is stipulated that the contract, the payment should be effective within 30 days after the shipment. So after the guy ships the merchandise, 30 days after, they expect the payment, right? So C is in Paris, buys the desk from D in New York with a total value of $10,000. Meanwhile, C offers furniture to B, which costs $10,000. How to issue three different instruments to clear the credit and debt relation among the four parties. So we see a transaction here between four people, right, in different places. So New York, Paris, New York, the transaction amount $10,000. They have a number, right, for the shipment date. They have a shipment date here. The guy is expecting to receive the money 30 days after they're shipping the share. Now I'm asking you how to issue the three different instruments, because they each one have to pay, right? There's arrow, right? So this is their arrow, represent one payment, the second payment, and the third payment. So how do we do negotiable instruments to settle the payment between those four people? So here it is. We can see clearly from the left chart, right? Left chart, the cash flow. This is the direction of the money, right? The money goes from this A in New York, B, B, C, C, D. Goes A to B, and C, and to D finally. In other words, A is the party that would effect payment finally. And on the contrast, B is the party who will receive the money. So the money starts from here and ends here. So you go to Paris, then still in Paris, and then come back to New York, right? Now let's see how they do it. B, issues of draft. Draft is a bill of exchange, is also called draft, okay? This is the name of the negotiable instrument. So B issues a draft and asks AA to pay the $1,000 to C. So B issues a document asking A to pay C. They settle the money in a monetary relationship among A and B and C. So this draft from this guy here is going to put all them together. So A, because of B, paying C. So C should endorse the draft to B. So now that C is receiving the money from A, he's going to receive the money and endorse to D. Remember, for example, he just cannot give to D. It's like a title for the car. They need to sign it and endorse it. Without the endorsement, he cannot cash the money. To transfer its credit, and these are final I see you guys are ready to learn, right? Okay. Let's finish for today. So next class, I will start with the homework, okay? Yeah, good question. All right? All right.
要不看看。